Hey there, I'm Scott, and this is Tangents. I keep thinking that I'm going to start doing these without the intro, and it's ingrained into me to do it. It's one of those things that, I don't know, things are done certain ways for a long time, and people don't think enough about them, or they don't, even if you think about it, you get stuck in this kind of pattern that everybody else does it this certain way, and that's just how it's done. And so you see on YouTube, tons of people have things where they have like a long intro, like it's a TV show, and there are things that I really like, but they have that. And then you see a variety. I mean, don't get me wrong; it's not like everybody's got that, but I see that a lot. You see podcasts or hear podcasts where people have this kind of long intro, and you're like, why? I mean, the difference between, I understand certain things in radio, like why they're done a certain way, or in TV, why they're done a certain way. And it is a very different thing where you have somebody actually kind of actively seeking out something, or if you're on YouTube and you have stuff randomly shuffling, you're not necessarily in need of having somebody tell you, hey, this is Tangents, or have a long theme song, or like title graphics and all this kind of stuff. But you still do it just because, oh, that's what everybody else does. And it's like this godforsaken fucking music beds under everything. When I was in graduate school, it's all a blur now. I was in graduate school. I was at the campus radio station, the Blaze, at the time, 1296 AM, Arizona State University's real, I mean, whatever the fuck. Um, I used to have that down. I can't even remember. The Blaze, 1260 AM. That's, I think, it. Anyway, doesn't matter. I'm there, and I'm doing the news, and also did my own show there. And for the longest time, they have certain things that they tell you to do. There's like, well, whenever you're talking, you need to have a music bed. You need to have a music bed. It's very important. Because if there's a moment of dead air, think about how traumatized people would be by that, which is fucking ridiculous. I hate music beds. Sometimes they're okay. Like if they're very subtle and just really at the lowest level, they're unobtrusive, kind of, and you can ignore them. But most of the time when people do them, they're very annoying. They're like, I can't stop listening to it. I can't, it's distracting, it's just irritating, and that's just how people do it. That's how, and you have all of these, like, I really think a lot of them kind of come down to almost sort of cargo cult, and combination of that and just weird superstitious things that people developed over time in terrestrial radio, for example. And those are just the way things had to be done. And some of them are not completely asinine, like you can see where they come from. The morning zoo shit, where people are getting into their car, they drive for a little while, they turn on your thing, not necessarily in that order, and then they stop. And so, yeah, they're going to be in the car for X amount of time, and then you have to tell them where they are, who you are, all this stuff, over and over again. And you have to keep repeating shit, and you can't go into great detail about stuff because they're not going to listen to the show for like 3 hours in a slot. They're going to listen to it for 30 minutes or for 10 minutes or however long they're in their car. And so you have to keep, you can't go beyond a superficial level. These are not things that are actually true, but these are the things that people say. You have to stay at a very superficial level. You have to keep repeating yourself. You can't spend more than a few minutes talking to people, or if you do, you have to keep covering the same territory, and you end up with something that's just painful. Like, I don't know about you, I cannot listen. If I'm in a rental car and it has only a radio and no Bluetooth, I find it excruciating. Because, first off, you got the ads. And this actually kind of dovetails into what I want to talk about today. So I'll get to that in a second. But they have all these things that they do, and they're just terrible. Um, and you listen to it, and it's just the same shit. You go into any market, it's different people, but it's fungible. It's like indistinguishable. And it's one of the reasons I think that Howard Stern did so well, because it was like a sea of the same crap and then something different. And, you know, when you're in the desert and you're thirsty, it doesn't matter if somebody gives you a glass of warm, sort of fetid water. It's fucking, you know, you get thirsty enough, you will drink that shit. And I'm not saying that Howard Stern has no value. I mean, I've listened to him, I've watched Private Parts. You know, he's got some stuff going for him. But at the same time, I think you could do a lot better. But I also think no one else was at the time. And so you can understand pretty easily why, you know, he took off. The other thing, and this gets, you know, I'm gonna kind of, this is the thing I want to talk about, which I almost brought up with the ads, but I'm gonna kind of like come around from the side and then steer into it. You also have things like people hate listened to him. So this was a big point in Private Parts. They looked at the people who listened to them, and there was much more attention given to him by people who said that they couldn't stand him and they just wanted to hear what he said next, than the people who loved him. And I don't know, you can look at that how you will, but I think the lesson there that a lot of people didn't take is, for example, on Twitter or in modern life, you have people like Donald Trump, who people listen to and follow because they hate him. There are a ton of people who are trolls. It's one of the fucking worst things about Twitter for me. You have people who just literally are trolls, and their whole thing is just sitting there saying stupid shit, just fucking with people. Yeah, I will return to that, but I was, somehow I got in this YouTube thing about The Matrix. The Matrix 4 is coming out at this year, at the end of the year. And I found, somehow like it recommended some video, and I got in this whole thing where I was watching a bunch of videos from this channel. And one of the videos, the dude who's in there is explaining a little bit of a very superficial level, obviously, of philosophy, but a bit about it. And he mispronounced Descartes in some way. It was the kind of thing where, like, if you'd only read Descartes and you didn't have any kind of pronunciation key, how you might say it. I did this myself, my very first job at Intel. I was looking at this thing, and instead of hysteresis, I said hysteris, or I don't remember what I said anymore, but it was like way, way off. And anyone who had ever heard the word knew immediately, this guy's never heard this word. In my defense at the time, it's not like there was YouTube where I could listen to somebody say it correctly, but nonetheless, I've done it myself. People do it. You make mistakes, and then you hopefully learn from them and move on. So he said like Descartes or something like that. And then a couple videos later, he's talking about the guy again, or Descartes or something. I don't know how he said it. It was painful. But then a couple videos later, people had obviously pointed out to him that he was mispronouncing it. And rather than like, oh, I fucked up, I'm going to correct myself, he did this kind of trollish thing, which was, okay, well, now I'm just going to pretend that I did that on purpose. And he changed it to like this weird, like Spanish pronunciation, quasi-Spanish pronunciation, Descartes, or something like that. You know, and I'm listening to it, and I'm like, God damn it, dude. Like, first off, I see what you're doing. You're sitting there going, oh, I'm just trolling here. Obviously, you fucked up. You didn't want to admit to the fact that you fucked up, which is fine. You could just change it and move on. But instead of that, he's like, oh, well, fuck you. I didn't fuck up. I was just fucking with you. So now I've made it to Descartes or something like it. Like, it was ridiculous. And it's honestly, I go back to the thing where I was a little kid under the sheets laughing when my mom was going like, where is Scott? Where is Scott? And at the time, I really think I didn't think she knew where I was. And it's so dumb in retrospect. And there's just a level of metacognition that just did not turn on at that time. The guy making this video, mind you, is I'm sure late teens, early 20s at least. So he should be there. But nonetheless, it was, So getting to the ads, I find ads just in general horrible. And I understand why they're kind of necessary in our society. I've talked about this before. My goal with this show and channel is not and has never been to build it into something where I've got like hundreds of thousands or millions of people watching or listening to me. That's not part of my interest here. Don't get me wrong, it would be nice to have this be a revenue stream. That'd be fucking awesome. But I hate the very fact that I'm even thinking about it in those terms. It's more like an art project or something that I just enjoy doing and I want to put out there. And if people like it, that's awesome. But it's something that I don't want to do and be driven by, oh, I need to get some kind of remuneration for it. I need to get compensate me, pay me. Fuck that shit. It's a sickness in our society that everything has to come down to that. I've talked about that with education. This terrible idea that the only value of education is somehow like lifetime earning ROI. It's not what education is about, and it completely misses the point. And if you're going, I totally agree. If you're going to university and you're planning on lifetime ROI, you could probably do better not going to university. But that's not the value that you or society is getting from you getting that education. And I would say, actually, this is one of those cases where if you actually looked at the real, like, society level return on investment, having educated people making decisions that are informed and, good is going to have massive impacts. And when I say massive impacts, I mean, if you're voting for somebody who's wasting trillions of dollars on stupid tax cuts for wealthy people who don't need it, that's a bad decision. And you're costing society trillions of dollars, literally. Trillions of dollars plus interest accrued over time. If you're picking somebody who's going to make investments in the future and who's going to do things like, have real universal health care or push for things that let people have jobs that are better and not be like under the thumb of somebody who's like, oh, you don't like my working conditions, well, fuck you. You're stuck going out into the world and being fucked if you don't take what I'm going to give you. That kind of thing. The net effect of having those good policies is actually massively positive for society. Having what we have now, where we have people who take publicly funded research and make insulin, for example, and sell it for a ridiculous markup, and then cause people morbidity and mortality that is unnecessary because they can't afford a fucking shot that was developed, again, with public money, that was sold for, the technology underlying that, sold for $1 by the people who developed it initially because they wanted it to be for the greater good. And now it's been absorbed and all this profit is going into a few hands in a pharmaceutical company. And you look at that and it's just so fucked up. It's just pure cost to everyone. And all it does is enrich a few people. The Tories, for example, who are trying to privatize and succeeding even in privatizing the National Health Service. They are just, and universities in the UK and this kind of stuff, they are simply taking public funds and something that was a public good, or to some extent still is, and they're finding ways to siphon that money off, massively enrich a few people, and fuck over society. And when people are not educated, they make this kind of decision. And, in a democracy, you end up with really terrible decisions that don't pay off in the future. So there is a massive, in terms of actual monetary ROI, reason to do good things. But that shouldn't be even a factor. You should be getting an education because you want an education. If you want to make art It's great if you can get compensated for it, but if not, we are a wealthy society, a fucking wealthy society. There's more than enough that there's more than enough around to go around, and let everybody who, if you want to play video games and do nothing but that, and just have like your Twitch stream and have, not for money, but just have like friends that you're hanging out with, you could totally do that, and we could afford to do that, even with masses of people doing that, and we'd be fine. We'd be fucking fine. And you could do also, like, if somebody wants to paint, or they want to work in Blender and make 3D art, or they want to build electronics or robots or do scientific research, whatever, we can afford that shit. And this is one of the things that irritates me about, we fundamentally are at a point where economically we could support being essentially a post-scarcity society. Now, that's not to say that we have no need for anyone to do hard work, like hard manual work. But the amount of that we actually have is very small, and the amount of money and resources that we have are such that we could compensate the people who do that stuff very well if we wanted to. You just don't enrich certain people massively for it. So this gets to ads. I lived in Paris for a little while. One thing that I really noticed there, I didn't watch a ton of TV there, but when you watch TV, you watch a show or something, and there will be a few ads. The ad breaks are very infrequent, they're pretty short, and they're honestly not that terrible. They're not good, don't get me wrong, but they're not ridiculous. In contrast here, I don't watch TV pretty much at all, but if you do watch broadcast TV, and I've seen it when I've gone places, I used to watch it when I was younger. And I will say this, when I was younger, the ad breaks were fewer, they were shorter, and a lot of the ads, like there were terrible ads then, but most of the ads were not as terrible. What we have today is like you watch something and it's like a little drop of something, of content, and then ads. And the ads just beat you over the head. They put very little effort into them. It's obvious that they've not, which makes them terrible and painful. And they'll repeat themselves over and over again because they really want to get you. They want to shake those fucking coins out of your pocket. And it's excruciating. Like you watch something and it's just like, this is one of the reasons, it's not that I like, oh, I'm so good I don't watch TV. No, it's I can't physically stand it. I cannot, if I'm in my car and I turn on the radio, the ads are so over the top obnoxious and so frequent, it drives me insane. It's not that I am like somehow superior and I don't want to listen to that shit. It's that I physically can't tolerate it. I would rather listen to nothing but road noise than listen to like a morning zoo kind of thing. And similarly also, I can't stand, despite the fact that you might gather that I like an NPR kind of thing, I can't tolerate that either. So there's no good content there for me other than the stuff that I listen to, which is podcasts, and sometimes I'll have like a YouTube thing playing. And also like the YouTube Premium, I'm convinced, I'm absolutely convinced that the whole point of ads on YouTube is to encourage people to get the premium subscription to be annoyed as hell at the ads. That's certainly why I did it. I'm never gonna buy anything that these ads are for. I watch a lot of YouTubers, and the shit that they advertise also, I mean, sometimes I can get it and you're like you're plugging your own swag and it's okay. But a lot of them, and I don't begrudge people making money doing this kind of stuff. If you're like Simon Whistler and you have, a shit ton of channels and they've all got millions of followers, you'd be stupid, honestly, not to hawk shit and find ways to make money out of it. But at the same time, I'm watching his stuff and you get to the ads and you're like, and his ads are decent, relatively speaking. He makes them interesting and kind of, but I still have to skip them most of the time because they're painful. And those are the good ones. And so, and I'm convinced also that most of the advertising, I mean, I do understand. You're somebody, especially if you're getting started, you need to get your name out there somehow. I understand the motivation that drives people to make ads, especially in a society where you have to make money, and like you can't just sit there and make art or do whatever your interest is. You have to somehow find a way to make money because of the way things are structured. So it drives people to make ads. But I'm convinced that most of the ads that you see on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, any of these things, TV included, I don't think these are actually selling products nearly as much or getting people's names out there nearly as much as just conning the advertisers into paying money for something that has zero value or very little value. And it's one of the things, like, I'm on Twitter and I see these fucking ads all the time. And I hate that. I particularly despise them there because they do put sponsored on the bottom. But the way that you read Twitter top to bottom, like you read the tweet and then you see the small sponsored at the bottom. And sometimes, like, I can pre-scan the tweet, but if I'm scrolling up, then that part is clipped off of the bottom of the screen. So it's not in my field of view until after I've already read the thing. And now I feel violated. I feel like, oh, you've conned me into reading this thing and wasting my time and, attention. And there's, if I want to fuck off and do whatever I want with my time and attention, that's on me. But when you're stealing it from me, I find that really fucking offensive. And I find it also offensive that you're conning the people who are selling these things and they're desperately trying to get their name out there and, like plug themselves. You're conning them too. Like, it's not like Twitter is doing a service for the people who are selling ads or who are, advertising on the thing. They're just annoying people like me, and they're fucking over people like that. So I think like 2 weeks ago now, I've been for a long time trying to figure out what to do. I used to report everybody who would get an ad as a spammer and then block them. That was just what I did. Didn't really work that well, did not help. And you end up, at a certain point, you start blocking people that you feel bad for blocking them. And you're not sending them any real message, right? And Twitter has this function called lists, which for the most part, as far as I can tell, is just meant to passive aggressively tell people like, oh, this is a liberal, it's basically like a way to shit on people. Scott, you were just added to this liberal cuck list or something like that, whatever the fuck they want to do. And so you'll get these notifications that say you were added to the list. I've always despised it and found it to be just a completely pointless feature. I know people also use it as a way to follow people without technically following them, which is weird. Unless you're, if you're somebody who had to listen, like you had to get the tweets from Trump or somebody as awful as that, Vosh or any of these people, I can understand maybe putting them on a list and then following the list instead of actually following them, but I don't know, just don't follow these people. They don't need or deserve your attention. They're not going to say anything that's worth listening to. They're not going to, there's no profound thing. You're not going to get anything out of interacting with them. Their whole fucking point as a troll, this is the thing that I hate about trolling. The whole point of trolling is not to actually do anything but to get people who are sincere to interact with them and go back and forth on some bullshit. And then you kind of drag them around and you get attention for it. The algorithm sees you, hey, you're getting interactions. It's it's a scam. It's a terrible fucking thing. And it's one of these things also where people do it and there's no real cost to it. So from their perspective, there's just upside to trolling. And so there's no real force to prevent people from doing it. And you get a lot of people that like before Trump got banned from Twitter, I swear I did not miss a Trump tweet, and I blocked him. Like years ago, I blocked him, but people would still fucking retweet the thing, or they'd take a screen cap and post it. And I'd be like, God damn it, dudes, just stop it. you're doing the thing that made Howard Stern popular. And I'm not saying, again, like Howard Stern seems like an okay-ish guy, maybe, compared to Trump, at least. I mean, when this is the scale that this is the scale you're using. It's hard not to be a decentish guy, relatively speaking. But you'd see this and it'd just be like, why? Stop that fucking shit. Don't follow these people, don't interact with them. Negative attention is still attention. As far as the algorithm is concerned, if you're interacting with them, even to tell them to go fuck off, you're helping them. You're amplifying them. You're making those things seem like they're worth showing to more people. And you're making them seem like that's an account that they want to show to more people because they get interactions. And all they care about are interactions and attention and, energy in that sense, which can be directed toward ads. So it all kind of comes around to that. I do think like the root of a lot of evil in a lot of these social media companies is that just fundamentally their whole business model is built around ads. I personally, I've said this many times, but I would rather pay Twitter my ARPU, my ad revenue, or the ad revenue per user, the amount of money that they're making off of selling my ads. I would much rather pay them that as a monthly subscription, or even more, because I think I'm not sure about these numbers, but I've seen something around like $5 a quarter per person in terms of like what they're actually making. I mean, $5 a quarter, it's like it's not even a coffee a month. It's like what I spend on a coffee every day, I could get 3 months of Twitter for. And in contrast, they're annoying the shit out of me continuously for something that I would gladly, I'd spend 3 times that. I'd give you a coffee a month. I'd give you $15 a quarter to not annoy me. And yet you're sitting here like flicking me in the forehead with this shit. And I'm never, ever, ever gonna buy anything from it. So, it's like, just win-win. Stop it. Stop that fucking shit. So anyway, I created a list a couple weeks ago just called spammers. And every time I get any kind of ad, I put them on the list and then I hide them. There's in French it's mask, but I think it means just like silence, mute, basically. I don't get any kind of notifications from them. I've been doing that, and I've noticed it's an interesting thing actually. The first week that I did it, I got about 1,000 ads, or 1,000 people that I blocked on that list. It's seemed to have gone down, and there have been a couple of times where Twitter seems to have just run out of, like, the pool of advertisers kind of tapped out, and so it was like, I'm assuming, that's my interpretation, but I think it's the case. So I ended up not getting any ads for like a couple of hours, and I was like, wow, this is fucking awesome. And then they came back. And they've also been throwing a lot of like, you could see the targeting was kind of like really just fucking wafer thin, because after I muted a bunch of them, they'd start showing me just random shit that had no possible bearing on me. Like no plausible algorithm was telling them this is a good ad to target to Scott. I think it was just like, well, shit, we just got to show it to somebody, so we'll just like throw it at you. The other thing that I noticed is that I muted a lot of the really like bigger accounts that were doing it, and then I started getting a lot of these like really small accounts, like 30 follower, 50 follower accounts, muting those as well, putting them on the list. Every time I put somebody on the list, they get a little notification, hey, you've been added to the list of spammers, which makes me feel, I know it doesn't do anything, but it makes me feel good. And it also definitely does impact some people, because I've had my direct messages opened on Twitter for a while. So anyone can send me a DM. I don't get a notification for it, but if I go to my messages thing, I can see the list of people who've sent them. I can go in there and accept them or not. And mostly yeah, I did this a long time ago because I thought it might help some people. Instead of actually helping people, basically what it's done is like occasionally I'll get some people talking about how stupid I am because I said something that yeah is really not at all stupid, but or I offended them talking about Bitcoin, or I offended them talking about incels, or I offended them talking about how shitty MAGA is, or I offended them talking about how we should have universal healthcare like every other fucking country. And yeah, they're like, oh, you stupid smooth brain. Like, which is a weird, I don't even want to go into that, but it's just like, come on, you dumb fuckers. It's weird that the people, I saw this, I was for a while going to a lot of political events. And at the events, there would be these Trumpers, the air quotes patriots, Arizona patriots, they called themselves. Fucking liars. But they would be at these events and they're out there, and first off, everybody's on their phone, on Facebook Live, and you can see like they're getting all of these likes, and it's just like, um, it's a weird moment in history that people are doing this shit. I do think 20, 30 years from now, this is going to be a relic of the past. Certainly 10 years ago, it was not a thing that happened. But for now, for this moment, it's a thing. And they get a lot of positive feedback. They're probably getting even ad revenue or something out of it. I don't know. But whatever they're doing, they're out there, and these are the people who are calling people dummies. They love this word dummy, which I don't know what it is about that word. When somebody's calling somebody else a dummy, it makes me feel like they're stupid. It just doesn't, there's something inherent to the word dummy that, like, I don't know, it just does not send the right signal. It's not telling people who are hearing you what you think it's telling them. Certainly not me. So they're calling people this. They're out there and they're like, yeah, you dummy. Smooth brain is a new one. They like the R word. It's like, but they like things like this. And again, like, these are just the stupidest fucking people. And, terribly misinformed, or rather disinformed. No understanding of just basic stuff. And they make stupid mistakes. And then they're calling you a dummy. It's like, come on, dude. First off, I have many insecurities. I have many things that, I'm very self-conscious about, or I don't. You're calling me a dummy. I probably am not going to feel any kind of sting from that. There are things you could say to me that I'm not confident about, but when it comes to intelligence, and I'm not saying like I'm a super genius, but I feel like I'm okay. I'm okay. I don't feel like a particular hollow balloon there. So you're calling me that, and it just bounces. It's like if you tried to call me a racist. Now, yes, every white person does benefit from systemic racism, for sure. And everybody has inherent biases and all of this stuff. So in that sense, yes, racism is something that we all have. But in the sense of being like a malignant, like a Klansman or a Nazi or this kind of stuff, probably you're going to throw that shit at me. It's like kind of going to just bounce off of me. It's, which is one of the things where you see people, they're the people who sit there and insist, don't call me a racist. I think the reason that they don't like it is because it hits really close to home. It's like, yeah, you are one, and this is the reason why you're so sensitive to being called one. So, in any case, I don't want to, I'm off weirdly on a tangent. How'd that happen? But going back to the spam stuff, I've been getting these DMs from people, and again, like 30 follower accounts, 50 follower accounts, and I feel bad about it too, because it's like, why did you put me on your spam list? Why do you? And I've actually taken the people who, for the most part, DM'd me off of the list, mainly because I understand, again, like I mentioned this earlier on, the society that we live in is structured in such a way that, it's a massive luxury for me to be able to sit here and take time and make this thing and put it out there and not have it be something that needs to somehow generate revenue. Most people could not do that. And, the fact that I do it is, it's partly is that I'm not motivated in the way that a lot of people are motivated, and partly it's just that I am at least, I'm not doing that great, but I'm financially well off enough that I can afford to do it, at least by my own internal measure of that. So, you see that kind of thing, and I get people messaging me, and they're like, "Oh, why did you put me on this? I'm just trying to get my name out there. I'm a rapper. I'm just getting started." I'm like, "Dude, you're making me feel bad about this." But again, I'm taking you off. Nobody cares that you're on my spammer list other than you. I appreciate that you're messaging me. And then also, I hate the system that is driving you to do this thing. That I really do think spam in general, advertising in general, is just malignant. It's not something. Now, that's not to say that there's not good advertising. There's definitely, the Think Different campaign. Whatever you may think of it, whatever you might think of Apple, that was a campaign that I think, it actually, without elevating it too much, it kind of left an impact, an imprint on me. It moved me, and it was something that it was well done. The voiceover was great, the words, the copy was great, the visuals, the people that they put in there, I loved, and the whole thing was just, it was. I don't mind that some of my mental space was taken up by the Think Different campaign. But then you get things like, Matchbox cars. That super speedy guy, talking about those. And then that was actually at least entertaining. But then you get a lot of ads that are just annoying. And some of them certainly effective. I don't even remember what it was for. Enterprise carpets or cleaning or something like this. But there was a commercial when I was a kid. 588-2300 Empire. And I don't think I've heard that in 25 years. It's seared into my mind. It was a jingle that just, it got in there. And I can't get it out. And that was, as far as ads go, at least it was not painful. It was annoying, but there's a part of my brain wasted on having that in it. I don't even know how many times I've seen that ad. And it's So anyway, I fucking hate spam. I hate the system that makes spamming necessary. I hate the fact that I get I've got my phone literally muted for incoming calls that aren't in my directory because I'm in a bunch of, I have several businesses, and these are all on government lists that are freely available. Through good intentions, of course, people put that stuff into a public database. Actually, I don't mind it. But you have these spammers that are like, oh, there's a database of phone numbers. Here's a bunch of shit that we can call. I'm on I think it's called SAM, some government things for contracting and grants and all of this kind of stuff. And all of those things are publicly accessible lists. And so I get just a shitstorm every day of calls. And they're all just, a lot of them actually aren't even somebody there. If I'm expecting a call, I'll turn that off for a bit and then I'll actually answer calls. And I'll get these things where I'm sure they're just checking to see if there's somebody answering, but it's like a dead end, dead line. And it's like, why did you waste my time with this, motherfucker? I get these ones that are, this one just is bizarre as shit to me. I get ni hao, and it's some kind of fucking Mandarin thing, or it's like, why do you think that I understand this? Why would you send me this call? And the thing is, of course, you can afford to do it because it costs you nothing. And even if some small percentage of people respond, then your money. You've made your nut and it's paid for itself. This is the problem with the fucking post office. I would gladly pay the post office $10, $20 a month just to not get spam. I hate it. I get this shit like, and I have the thing that's terrible about it also is I get like these, I think it's called buyer's edge. I would put that in, and sometimes the postman puts an envelope that I need inside of that, so I have to like open the thing up and thumb through it. I can't just tell by feel because there'll be garbage in there too that's like a harder card stock or something. But if it's an envelope that I needed, then all of this shit is just extra noise around me. And it's just, it's shit. It's garbage. And again, people, they're like, I need to feed myself. I need to make money somehow. So they pay for this shit. And the post office also, they need to somehow make revenue because of the stupid way we've set this shit up. This obsession with everything has to be run like a business rather than it could just be a public service that's just, I mean, imagine if we structured the world, and I'm not saying everything, but like vaccines or insulin or postal service, as this is just a public good that we're paying for, and we collectively decided like we just want the mail to work and we're not gonna load everybody's mailbox up with spam. The amount of extra work that gets done just to spam people every day is ridiculous. And if you take that out, and then the thing that really kills me there, shit tons of wasted paper, often also plastic and things. So it's not that paper is the most recyclable thing in the first place, but it's not recyclable if you have like a credit card in there or something similar, or it's less recyclable. And then just the carbon that is wasted moving this shit around, all this mass, all this energy, all the time. And it's just to annoy people. Like the vast majority of this shit, people are like me. I'm sure there are people who get stuff through this stuff. And again, if like 1% of people do it, then it probably pays for itself. If 0.1% of people open these things up and they're like, oh, here's a thing in buyer's edge, it probably paid for itself, which is fucking annoying. Or maybe even a smaller percentage. But most people are like me and they just take the stuff directly from the mailbox, go through, make sure that nothing important is getting sifted in, and then it goes into the recycling bin. Every week, my recycling bin is stuffed full of a ridiculous amount of paper that's just going back to get recycled and probably made into more buyer's edge bullshit. It's disgusting and it's stupid. So one thing I have to wrap up. I have a meeting coming up. I was gonna be flying today, and I'm definitely not because it's cloudy out. They call it scud running, where you're like staying low enough that you're not near the clouds. I'm not a pilot in the sense that I want to take stupid risks like that. We're in Phoenix. I get good weather. Don't have an IFR rating yet. I'm pretty content to just wait until a better day and not take stupid chances. Call me crazy. But I was going to do that. That's why I'm having this opportunity to record this. And I had a point to that, and now I've completely lost it. It's so sad. I'm very. I really do blame my chronic insomnia on just like that. But anyway, it came back to me. My last one of these, I didn't realize that I got a little too much into the math, but I had some feedback that was like, I could only listen to a little bit of it because you got a little over the deep end in the math. I'm gonna try to avoid that kind of stuff. We'll talk about it, but it's hard to understand exactly like what is the right level for certain things like that, and especially there's a problem where like I've had so much math that the stuff that I was talking about, I thought I was talking about it at a very high level, and just kind of but you don't realize, or it's very easy to get like enmeshed in this stuff. I'm here with the math that I do. Rolling back here is still probably more than most people are either care to listen to or are going to understand. So dial it back a little bit more. I'm going to work on that. I could certainly keep doing this. I mean, it's, it is again for me, but, if people are listening, I'm not particularly inclined. I have plenty of shit that I can talk about. I don't really need to like go into crazy stuff about, you know, singular value decompositions and this kind of stuff. I could probably leave that stuff for the most part. I might talk about it, tangentially at a high level going forward, but I'm going to try to avoid it. Shouldn't be too hard. So anyway, with that, I think I'm gonna get a break. But thank you as always for listening. I will talk with you next week. Stay tuned.